So this leads us to politeness theory. Dr. Brown and Dr. Levinson, who understood about face, created a theory to help us know how we can interact with people during awkward and embarrassing conversations to help them save face. The research shows that if we help other people save face, they're going to be more likely to work with us and help us with our needs as well. So this theory is about how we can use face and politeness to engage in awkward or difficult conversations. Can you think of that friend who corrects other people and is typically right, but does it in a way that's maybe rude or abrasive? This theory is useful for those types of situations. How can we make sure that we are getting our needs met in a way that's not pushing people away or attacking the other person or putting the other person down? So this is really a theory of tact. How can we say what we need to say to get our goals accomplished without ruining relationships? There are 4 main assumptions to this theory. The reason we need to understand these assumptions is if we can understand the core components of this theory when it works in face-to-face settings, then we can take it and apply it to computer-mediated or virtual settings. The first thing we need to understand is that people have this struggle between wanting to do what we want and wanting to do what makes us look good to other people. So this is the Nutella assumption. The second thing is that in any conversation that we have, our positive and negative faces can either be validated, meaning that people treat us the way that we think they should based off of how we want them to see us, or threatened, meaning we're starting to see that maybe people aren't seeing us the way we want them to see us. People try to do things that avoid making ourselves look bad, but we also try to avoid making other people look bad. This face that we have, this desired public image, is sort of like a mask that we wear. And we all know that this mask is not perfect. None of us are as professional as we try to make ourselves look. None of us are as funny as we try to make ourselves look. And because we all know that we're wearing this mask, we realize that if we treat other people the way they want to be seen, then they're going to be more likely to treat us the way that we want to be seen. So we sort of are playing this game together where we're treating them the way we think they want us to treat them, and we hope that in return, they'll maintain our face. These face-threatening acts we talked about can be really severe, or they can be not so severe. So we need to talk about 6 things that determine how severe these face-threatening acts are. The first thing that determines how severe a face-threatening act is how important the rule is that we violate. For example, if you were to show up at a class wearing pajamas, you're violating a social norm. But it's not really that big of a deal. I've had students show up to pajamas and nobody really judges them because the rule is not that strict. But if you show up to your grandma's funeral wearing pajamas, you're going to be a little bit embarrassed. And that's because it's a bigger rule. It's a higher expected social norm. The second thing is that when our behavior causes more harm to other people, then it's a bigger threat to face. I sometimes make mistakes when I'm grading. If I make a mistake when I'm grading, it is a threat to face because maybe I'm not seen as competent in your eyes as I would like to be. But it's a smaller thing, as you can point it out to me and we can correct it and move on. But if I make a mistake that makes it so that one of my students gets kicked out of the university, maybe I accuse them of plagiarizing when they didn't, that is a bigger threat to my face because the harm is bigger. When somebody does something that is embarrassing or a face-threatening act, and we think that they were responsible for it or that they had control over it, we're more likely to feel like it threatens their face. Let's go back to that example of you walking with your friends and tripping on the sidewalk. If your friends think that you tripped because you're a clumsy person, then it's going to be a bigger threat to your face. If they think that you tripped because maybe the sidewalk was uneven, they're less likely to judge you and it's more likely to be less of a threat to your face. When we engage in face-threatening acts, we also look at how much they impose on the other person. If I ask you to give me a ride across town, that's not as big of a threat to your face. But let's say I ask you to pick me up to give me a ride somewhere, and as soon as we start driving, I say, now take me down to Chicago O'Hare Airport, which is 3 hours away. That's likely to be more of a threat to face because it imposes more. Power also influences this. I can do more embarrassing things as a teacher than you can as a student because of the power dynamics. You probably have noticed this, where you've seen professors have a spelling mistake in their email, and it's not that big of a deal because they're the person in power. But when a student has a spelling mistake, then we lose points for that. So that's an example of how power dynamics influence this. So this is why your boss can get away with things more than employees can, because the power dynamics change how we perceive face. The final thing is that social distance influences this. When there's a larger social distance between individuals, then there's going to be a greater threat to face, right? That social distance might be economic distance. It might just be cultural distance. It could be closely related to power distance. But the bigger distance, the more threat to face when we have face-threatening acts. So, what can we do about it? The whole purpose of this theory is to help us understand how we can engage in face-threatening acts in a way that is tactful. So, the theory suggests that we have 5 options whenever we have to engage in a face-threatening act. So, I'd like you to think about one specific example, and we'll walk through the different options. Let's go back to the example we tried at the beginning of this semester, when you have to ask your professor for them to go back and regrade your assignment. Maybe you think that they graded it unfairly, and you're asking them to go back and look at your assignment again. So our 5 options, because we want to consider the professor's face, if I go up and I just demand and I say, Ryan, you graded this wrong, you're a horrible teacher, it's going to threaten my face and make me feel like maybe I'm not as good as a teacher as I think that I am. So the 5 options. The first option would be simply avoidance. So I might say, yeah, I think Ryan graded this wrong, but I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to let him think that he's a good professor, even though he's not. This would be what we would call the most polite approach, because it allows Ryan to still see himself the way that he wants to be seen. It's not the most effective, and it's typically not the best approach, but it's most polite in that it allows Ryan to see himself a certain way. The next option would be off-record. Off-record is where we sort of hint that we want the other person to do something without actually engaging in the face-threatening act. So we don't tell the other person what we're really thinking, we sort of hint at it. So you might say something like, I tried really hard in your class, and I was hoping to get a better grade. And then you hope that Ryan then connects to that and says, oh, maybe I need to go back and reevaluate their grade because it doesn't think that they thought that was correct. So we're hoping that the change will come as we make implications of the change. So our next option is to go on record with these approaches. So these last 3 options are what we call on record approaches, meaning we're telling the person the direct face-threatening act, but with 2 of these options, we're helping them to manage the face threat. The first option would be bald on record. Bald on record is where you just say flat out, I think you should give me extra points, you graded this in unfairly. And you don't do anything to help Ryan manage his face. The other 2 options are where we use redress, or we engage in the face-threatening act, but we also try to help that person maintain face. So positive politeness, or an appeal to positive politeness, would be when I engage in the face-threatening act, but I also include a way to help the person feel positive face. Remember, positive face is a desire to feel liked and connected and included. So if I'm trying to appeal my grade while also appealing to my professor's positive politeness, I might say something like, hey, Dr. Allred, I don't think this last assignment was graded fairly, but I've loved being in your class and I love you as a professor, so I was wondering if you could go back and relook at it. So what you're doing is you're showing me, look, I think this was unfair, but you're also showing me I like you and I still want you to be included. In that way, you're helping to limit how much you're threatening my face. Negative politeness, or an appeal to negative politeness, which is our last option here, is appealing to the person's negative face needs while engaging in the face-threatening act. So if you know that your professor likes to be seen as autonomous or independent, then you might use an appeal to their negative face. So here you might say something like, look, I think you graded this last assignment unfairly, and I want you to go back and check it. But the choice is yours. I know that ultimately you're the one with the power, and you're the one who knows more than I do. So if you choose to go back and regrade my paper, that would be great. But if not, I recognize the choice is up to you. So what you're doing is you are telling them that you think something's wrong, but you're doing it in a way that helps them still feel like they have the power in this situation. So you're appealing to their positive face. Take some time, think about a situation in your life where you've engaged in a face-threatening act. What are the 5 different options that you might use there?